Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you my thoughts on East 10 Nordics. This is an action RPG developed by Falcom and released in October of 2024. One of the many other releases that I looked at and said, I don't really have the time for it right now. But in 2025, I'm trying to approach a lot of the RPG franchises I've neglected over the years, and East is one of them. So this is my first real experience with the entire RPG franchise, a franchise that, mind you, spans pretty much as long as Final Fantasy. In fact, I think it spans slightly longer if my memory serves. The only other experience I really have with it is a brief sponsored video I did a few years back, which, by the way, I absolutely loved, and I don't know why it took me this long to play another game in the East franchise and one all the way through to completion. So I want to share with you my thoughts on the game. Did I like it? What was good about it? What was not good about it? You know the deal. So let's get started. I'd also like to say that this only reflects the original release. There is a confirmed complete edition coming to Japan called Proud Nordics. It has an unconfirmed Western release, and quite frankly, I wasn't going to wait for that in order to try out my first game in the franchise, like an actual playthrough. So if you're watching this for some reason after Proud Nordics comes out, I don't know what's going to be different about that. I have no input on it. So this is just based on the original release, which I think is adequate. So quick TLDR, comfortable action RPG experience with good pacing, fun and flashy gameplay, and a satisfactory, albeit predictable story. The soundtrack itself is also absolutely wild. Definitely sounds like they just ask composers to make some general bangers, and let me tell you, there's some real bangers in this game. And then it just seems like they place them randomly throughout the game. Someone in my chat said, yes, that's actually what they do, and, well, I believe it, because there was just crazy songs all over the place. It's nothing groundbreaking, and on anything other than the Nightmare or Inferno difficulty, it's a really, really easy game. But I still did enjoy my time with it. So the story for this game follows the adventure of a 17-year-old Adol Kristen who finds himself wrapped up in a terrible war between undead forces and the people of the Obelia Gulf while being chained to a princess of the Viking clan called the Normans. This two-person tag team makes up your party for the entirety of the game, with active swapping between each of them being a crucial element of chaining together attacks for big damage. They can also team up to perform more deadly offensive and defensive maneuvers, which we'll get into in a minute or two. Now, I don't want to talk spoilers. As I said earlier, the story rarely throws you any curveballs that you at least didn't see coming a little bit. There was maybe a few things I was definitely off on, at least slightly, but just don't expect any major twists or turns. Thankfully, the character cast is quite lively and is able to develop an entertaining chemistry throughout the roughly 40-hour adventure. Also, while I'm not going to spoil it, I would definitely pay attention to the names of everything. I'm sure that people who have played the franchise know exactly what I'm talking about, but you'll definitely get a real kick out of the naming convention for all of the locations and types of peoples that exist in the East world. It's, well, it's definitely creative. Let's call it that. Oh, also, in case you're worried, you don't need to play any of the other East games to play this one. Almost all of the games follow Adol Kristen, but at various points in his life as he's documented in his writing. So it's basically like their stories being read and they're being, these are just the playable versions of his stories. This one more so just places itself between other games through context clues without requiring you to actually understand what's happened in them. Obviously, I haven't played the other games, so I can't speak for the other games if they're like similar to that or if the other ones actually require you to have game knowledge, but this one I never felt like I was out of the loop about anything. Now for the gameplay, it features only 2 party members, and that took a bit of an adjustment for me. I have no quarrels with it, but I guess I've just played so many larger roster games lately that I was waiting for a 3rd party member, and then I realized very quickly, wait, no, this is all of them. Each character has their own SP gauge that depletes when they use skills. Whichever character isn't being controlled by the player rapidly regains SP, so you'll want to be swapping often to ensure you can chain together skills as quickly as possible while blocking or dodging enemy attacks. This in turn creates a skill chain that further reduces the skill cost and allows for even faster chaining or even more reliable chaining of your more powerful skills. The two can also perform combo attacks that consume both of their SP, usually with much higher offensive properties and even sometimes like a bonus defensive property as well. They can be further boosted with your Revenge gauge, a gauge that rapidly fills as you block incoming attacks. Perfect Guarding also opens up opportunities for simple or cinematic counters that greatly restore SP, in addition to increasing the Revenge gauge, so you'll often feel like a parry god, even if the difficulty of performing such counters is quite forgiving. While the flow of battles is fun with several heavy-hitting skills, individual skill properties such as, iframes on startup or status ailment application, honestly it just boiled down to how safely I could chain skills together. I often thought very little about the order of the skills I used, outside of which combos just felt or looked coolest. Like, oh, if I do this first and that first and this, oh, that's so cool. But there was like almost never a strategic element to it, and I never really felt punished for not digging any deeper into it. In fact, throughout most of the game, I was simply trying to master the skills by using them repeatedly, which allows you to learn new skills, which fortunately is not too grindy, but you do get enough skills that you kind of end up swapping constantly, like, oh, let me go master that and this and that, until you get to about the mid to late point in the game when you're not learning as many new skills and you actually have picked up some things that make the learning process go so fast that you basically are just kind of always ahead on it. It's really a game about the spectacle of the animations, and I'm just glad that quite a few of them have some weight behind them, because I'm not a big fan of the flashy, but it feels like you're cutting through paper kind of skills. No, there's some really heavy-hitting ones in there, and those were the ones I definitely preferred. Now, as you battle, you'll level up, and you'll be able to do what it's like called release mana lines, which allows you to slot in mana seeds in a kind of skill tree looking thing. You can find these throughout the world, or you can craft them and they grant bonus stats and even develop set bonuses if you use multiples of the same color and chain them together properly on the grid. While the system can allow you to game it for some incredibly strong bonus stacking as you level up, I of course went for about 50% crit and then stacked crit damage, it's also intuitive enough that casual players can likely just throw in whatever they like and do well enough, especially on the lower difficulties. I'd imagine on Nightmare or Inferno, it's a lot more important to seek out specific bonuses and stat thresholds, but from what I'm told, even on those difficulties, the game's not that much harder. I should also say at this point, I specifically played on the hard difficulty because I hadn't played an Ys game before. As much experience as I have playing games like this on highest difficulties, I didn't want to pretend like I was just going to be some giga god. There are a couple of bosses that made me grateful that I played on hard and not a higher difficulty, not because they were hard like skill-wise, but they were just annoying fights. There's one really early. Some of you will probably know what I'm talking about, against a giant worm. I hated that boss fight, and I think I would hate it even more on the higher difficulty, so I was kind of glad that I didn't play. But all the same, I don't know how much it changed. People have told me that it's not that much harder on the higher difficulties. It's really just the limiting of like healing items and the amount of damage that you take. Now, as you progress through the story, the world eventually opens up little by little and allows you to explore the different zones of the Obelia Gulf via boat, finding landmarks and explorable islands, or doing battle with enemy ships as you take regions back from the undead army of the Grieger. This ship is frustratingly slow early on, but fortunately, between upgrades and fast travel, the ship gameplay picks up at a decent pace. I had more fun with it than I expected after I got a few hours in. You'll find side quests, expand on character relationships, and yes, fish. It took me roughly 40 hours to completely explore the map and finish the story on hard mode, though it would seem that I missed a side quest somewhere. Probably just talking to a random NPC. I don't know. Overall, I found it to be a well-paced, digestible RPG with adequate exploration and side content. It won't blow you away in any of these regards, but if you're looking for something that isn't a 100+ hour marathon of an RPG, this one should be a fun time. Now, I do have other criticisms that didn't really hamper my experience that much, but are worth mentioning. The game's visual clarity can be a bit lacking at times, especially later when special effects litter the screen. The camera being a bit too close was also a contributor, but the crazy special effects of the endgame skills from both you and the bosses could be a bit much. Oh, there's also a scan type ability that you get eventually, and I despise these in almost every game. Well, depending on the iteration. Lots of chests in Ys 10 are buried and can only be dug up when the scan feature is active, so you're constantly using it to make sure you don't miss any. It doesn't even permanently display them on the map once you've scanned the location. It's just you have to keep pressing it to make sure. There's like little mounds of dirt to remind you, but it'd be nice if at least after using it, all the chests remained visible and interactable without having to use it again and again and again. Enemy variety also isn't too in-depth either. One of the mini-bosses you encounter as part of the story is used probably 20 different times within the first like 15 to 20 hours, and only a couple of them are even slightly different. A few more enemy types would go a very long way. Now, there are some other tiny things here or there, but overall, I can definitely recommend the game as a whole. If you plan on 100%ing it, you'll probably get closer to 50 to 60 hours, plus there's some optional stuff that's unrelated to achievements that you can do as well. The real question is if Proud Nordics will come to the West, and if so, when? Because that's really going to be one of the biggest determining factors about whether you were to actually purchase this game. The simple fact that Proud Nordics was announced was enough to get a surge of mixed or negative reviews recently on Steam, so I'll leave that one up to you. But at the very least, if it never does, or if you're not really that invested in the idea of waiting for an enhanced version of the game, one that I don't even know what they're enhancing or couldn't tell you about, this would still be a good time. Not mind-blowing, but a good time. I'll tell you what, I'm definitely buying that soundtrack. I couldn't tell you where any of the music goes. I could not, if you played a song from this game, I literally couldn't place it anywhere in the game. Like, I couldn't figure out exactly where it's from, but I can tell you that it's just an insane amount of bangers. So that's a soundtrack worth getting as far as I'm concerned, just to have stuff like that in your like playlist if you like to have game music and stuff on in the background while you do other things. And yeah, that covers all of my impressions, I'd say, on the game. You know, I'd say this was as digestible as the game is itself. If you've played the game, let me know what you thought in the comment section below. And if you've played the other Ys games, let me know what your favorite ones are in the comment section. And if you could recommend that somebody play one, if it's not Ys 10, which one would you recommend they play? Who knows? It might be the one that I end up playing next when I have time. There's a lot of other game releases coming up, so I probably won't be touching the Ys franchise again until we're in a bit of a dead space, and I don't know when that's going to be. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned. I've already gotten some thoughts on some other games that I've played in January. Dynasty Warriors I put some time into. I'm currently going through Tales of Grace's F, which I'm really enjoying, and I'm sure I'll have plenty more over the next several months. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.